The planet they called New Eden sat at the very edge of known space. It was a quiet world with green fields, blue skies, and gentle winds that carried the smell of growing things. Humans had settled here 3 generations ago, building small towns and farms far away from the busy core worlds of their civilization. They wanted peace. They wanted simple lives, and for many years that is exactly what they had. Was 8 years old. She had brown hair that never stayed in place and a smile that could light up any room. She lived with her parents in a white farmhouse surrounded by golden wheat fields that seemed to stretch forever. Her father, Danny, had once been a pilot in the human fleet. He had seen battles among the stars and watched friends die in the cold darkness of space. But those days were behind him now. He had traded his uniform for work clothes and his weapons for farming tools. He wanted to grow things instead of destroy them. Her mother, Lisa, was a scientist who studied alien life. She had come to New Eden to research the native plants and animals. She fell in love with Danny, and they built their life together on this peaceful world. They thought they had escaped the dangers of the galaxy. They were wrong. Far away in a region of space that humans had not yet explored, there lived a species called the. They were tall creatures with gray skin, sharp claws, and eyes that could see in the darkness. They had evolved as hunters on a world where only the strong survived. Their entire culture was built on one simple idea: the strong take what they want and the weak suffer. They had conquered many species over thousands of years. Some they enslaved, others they hunted for sport. They believed this was the natural order of things. They had been watching humans for some time now. They sent scouts to observe human colonies and study human behavior. What they saw made them laugh. Humans had no claws, they had no fangs. Their skin was soft and easy to cut. They did not abandon their sick or their old. They wasted resources protecting those who could not protect themselves. This was proof that humans were weak. They were prey waiting to be hunted. A commander named was given a simple mission. He would take a small team to a human colony and capture one of their young. This would show the galaxy how helpless humans really were. It would prove that this new species was nothing to fear. Chose New Eden because it was isolated and poorly defended. He chose to take a child because children were sacred to humans. Taking one would break their spirit completely. On the day it happened, the sun was shining bright over New Eden. Had finished her morning lessons and asked her mother if she could play outside. Lisa said yes, but told her to stay close to the house. Promised she would. She ran outside into the warm afternoon air, chasing butterflies through the tall grass at the edge of their property. She did not see the ship land in the woods nearby. She did not hear them moving through the trees with silent steps. She was too busy laughing at a yellow butterfly that kept flying just out of her reach. Lisa was inside the house, preparing lunch. She looked out the window and saw playing in the distance. She smiled at the sight of her daughter so happy and carefree. Then she looked away to check on the food cooking on the stove. That moment changed everything. When Lisa looked out the window again, she saw something that stopped her heart. 3 tall gray figures were emerging from the tree line. They moved fast, faster than any human could run. Saw them too and froze in place, too scared to move or scream. Lisa ran for the door, screaming her daughter's name, but she was too far away. She watched helplessly as one of the creatures grabbed and threw her over its shoulder like she weighed nothing at all. Finally found her voice and screamed for her mother. The sound cut through the air like a knife. Danny heard the screams from the barn where he was working. He ran outside and saw his wife sprinting across the field toward the trees. He saw the gray figures disappearing into the shadows with something small struggling in their arms. His daughter. They had taken his daughter. He ran after them, but by the time he reached the tree line, a ship was already rising into the sky. It climbed higher and higher until it disappeared into the clouds. Then it was gone, taking with it. Lisa collapsed to her knees in the grass. Danny stood beside her, staring at the empty sky with a look on his face that his wife had never seen before. It was not just anger. It was something deeper and darker, something that had been sleeping inside him since he left the military, something that was now wide awake. Within an hour, the colony's emergency signal was sent to Earth. The message was simple and terrible. Alien hostiles had kidnapped a human child. The signal traveled faster than light, jumping from relay station to relay station until it reached the human. They expected humans to cry. They expected them to send diplomats who would beg and offer gifts. They expected fear and submission, just like every other species they had hunted. They had studied humans for months and thought they understood them. They understood nothing. On ships scattered across a dozen star systems, human soldiers received the news. They did not cry. They did not beg. Instead, something cold and ancient woke up inside them. It was the same thing that had made their ancestors chase prey across endless plains until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. It was the same thing that had made them fight wars against impossible odds and refuse to surrender. It was the same thing that Danny felt as he stared at the sky where his daughter had vanished. Humans were about to teach the galaxy a lesson it would never forget. You could attack their worlds. You could burn their cities. You could kill their soldiers, but you never, ever touch their children. The hunt was about to begin, and this time they would learn what it meant to be prey. The message reached Earth in less than 6 hours. It traveled from relay to relay across the vast darkness of space until it arrived at Fleet Command Headquarters. A young officer read it first. Then she read it again because she could not believe the words on her screen. Within minutes, the message had reached the highest levels of human government. A child had been taken. An 8-year-old girl named had been kidnapped by an alien species called the species was known to the human military, though they had never made direct contact. Intelligence reports described them as aggressive hunters who took captives from weaker species for sport and ritual purposes. The galaxy expected humans to do what every other species had done when they came for their young. They expected negotiations. They expected tribute. They expected surrender. What happened instead shocked everyone. Commander Sam Grant was 42 years old with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too many battles. He commanded the starship Resolute, a heavy cruiser patrolling the border regions near New Eden. He was eating dinner in his quarters when the priority signal came through. He read the message, set down his fork, and was on the bridge within 3 minutes. His crew watched him read the mission orders. They saw his jaw tighten and his hands grip the edge of his command chair. Then he spoke in a voice as cold as space itself. Set course for the border, maximum speed, all crew to battle stations. No one questioned the order. No one asked why. They already knew. A child had been taken, and that meant only one thing. Across human space, the same scene repeated itself again and again. Ships changed course. Leave was canceled. Soldiers who had retired years ago sent messages to their old units asking to rejoin. Factories that built civilian goods switched to making weapons and ammunition. It happened so fast that alien observers could not believe what they were seeing. The ambassador sent a confused message to his government. The humans were not crying, he wrote. They were not panicking. They were organizing with a speed and efficiency that seemed impossible. It was as if their entire species had been waiting for this moment. On New Eden, Danny walked into the colonial governor's office and placed his old military identification on the desk. His eyes were red from crying, but his voice was steady. I am reactivating my commission. I want to be on whatever ship goes after them. The governor tried to argue. Danny was a farmer now, not a soldier. He was too emotionally involved. He would be a liability. Danny leaned forward and spoke quietly. My daughter is out there. I trained for 20 years to protect people. I killed for my species. I almost died for my species. And now you are going to tell me I cannot fight to save my own child. The governor looked into his eyes and saw something that made him stop arguing. He approved the request immediately. Lisa did not wait for permission. She was a scientist, and she began doing what scientists do. She gathered every piece of information about that existed in human databases. She studied their biology, their culture, their history. She looked for weaknesses. She found more than she expected. They were fast and strong, but they tired quickly. Their eyes were sensitive to bright light. Their hearing was so sharp that certain frequencies caused them pain. They had never faced an enemy that knew how to exploit these flaws because they had never faced an enemy that fought back. Lisa compiled her research and sent it to Fleet Command. Within hours, it was being distributed to every ship in the rescue fleet. The leadership watched the human response with amusement at first. These soft creatures were putting on a show, they thought. They would make noise and then send diplomats to beg for their child's return. It was what prey always did. But the humans did not send diplomats. They sent warships, lots of warships. Commander, who had led the kidnapping mission, received reports from his scouts. Human vessels were converging on space from multiple directions. They were not hiding their approach. They were not trying to negotiate. They were coming straight for them with weapons armed and shields raised. Brought this information to the High Council. Some of the elders laughed. Others looked concerned. One very old, who had lived long enough to see many species conquered, did not laugh at all. "We may have made a mistake," the old one said. "We studied their bodies and thought them weak. We should have studied their history instead." The other council members asked what he meant. The old pulled up records of human warfare. He showed them images of human soldiers fighting in conditions that would kill most species. He showed them humans continuing to fight with injuries that should have stopped them. He showed them humans traveling thousands of miles to rescue single individuals, spending resources that seemed completely irrational. "They are persistence hunters," the old one explained. "On there, they chased prey until the prey died from exhaustion. They never stop, they never give up, and we just took one of their young." The council fell silent. On the Resolute, Commander Grant received word that Danny had been assigned to his ship. The commander was not happy about it. Fathers who had lost children did not make good soldiers. They made desperate men who got themselves and others killed. But when Danny came aboard and reported for duty, Grant saw something that changed his mind. Danny was not desperate. He was focused. His emotions were locked away behind a wall of cold purpose. He would not make mistakes because he could not afford to make mistakes. His daughter's life depended on him being perfect. Grant assigned Danny to the strike team that would go down to the planet's surface. If anyone deserved to be there when they found the child, it was her father. The fleet gathered at the edge of space. 12 warships carrying over 3,000 soldiers, all for one little girl. Alien observers called it insane. Humans called it necessary. Commander Grant addressed his crew before they crossed into enemy territory. His words were short and simple. "We are going to bring that child home. Anyone who tries to stop us will regret it. Any questions?" There were none. The fleet jumped to faster-than-light speed and disappeared into the darkness. The hunt had truly begun. The planet was a harsh world of gray rock and dark skis. They used it as a staging ground for their hunting parties, a place where they brought their captives before taking them deeper into their territory. Had been held there for 3 days. She was scared and cold and missed her parents more than she had ever missed anything in her short life. But she had not given up hope. Her father had always told her that no matter what happened, he would find her. She believed him. The compound was built into the side of a mountain. It had thick walls, heavy weapons, and hundreds of guards. Commander was confident that no rescue would succeed. He had seen human military reports and knew their capabilities. They were clever, yes, but they were still just soft creatures with no natural weapons. His hunters would tear them apart. He was wrong. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light speed directly above. There was no warning, no attempt to negotiate. They barely had time to raise their shields before the first missiles struck their orbital defense platforms. Commander Grant stood on the bridge of the Resolute, watching the battle unfold on his tactical display. 3 other cruisers flanked his ship, pouring fire into the positions. The aliens had expected a small force, maybe 1 or 2 ships at most. They had not expected a full assault fleet. Defense grid at 40% and falling, his tactical officer reported. Ground batteries are trying to target us, but they cannot get a lock. Grant nodded. Keep hitting them. I want that grid down in 10 minutes. Strike teams prepare for insertion. Deep in the ship, Danny checked his weapon for the 5th time. The rifle felt natural in his hands, like an old friend he had not seen in years. Around him, 30 other soldiers prepared for the drop. They were some of the best fighters humanity had ever produced, and they had all volunteered for this mission. Every single one of them. A young soldier sitting next to Danny looked nervous. Danny remembered being that young, that scared before his first real battle. First combat drop, Danny asked. The young man nodded. Yes, sir. I trained for years, but this is different. Danny put a hand on his shoulder. You are going to be fine. Just remember why we are here. There is a little girl down there who needs us. Focus on that. The soldier straightened up and nodded again, this time with more confidence. The dropship launched from the Resolute and screamed down through the atmosphere of. Anti-aircraft fire filled the sky, but the human pilots were skilled and their ships were fast. They weaved through the explosions and tracer rounds like dancers in a deadly performance. Danny watched through the small window as the ground rushed up to meet them. He saw the compound ahead, built into the mountainside like a wound in the rock. Somewhere inside that fortress was his daughter. He would find her or die trying. There was no other option in his mind. The dropships landed hard on the rocky ground outside the compound walls. Soldiers poured out before the dust had even settled, moving with speed and purpose toward the enemy positions. They opened fire immediately, their energy weapons cutting bright lines through the air. The first human soldiers fell, but the rest kept coming. They did not stop. They did not retreat. They pushed forward through the gunfire with a determination that they had never seen before. Danny moved with his team along the left flank, using cover to advance toward a side entrance. A hunter jumped out from behind a rock, claws extended, ready to tear Danny apart. Danny shot it twice in the chest before it could take another step. He stepped over the body and kept moving. The fighting inside the compound was close and brutal. Humans clashed in narrow corridors and dark rooms. They were faster and stronger, but the humans had something they did not. The humans had Lisa's research. Soldiers used bright flash grenades that blinded the sensitive eyes. They used sound devices that broadcast frequencies that caused the aliens to stumble and hold their ears in pain. They exploited every weakness that Lisa had found, turning the own biology against them. Danny took a hit to his left arm from an energy blast. The pain was terrible, but he wrapped the wound with a quick bandage and kept fighting. Another soldier saw the injury and offered to take him back to the medics. Not until I find my daughter, Danny said through gritted teeth. He pushed deeper into the compound, following the layout that intelligence had provided. The holding cells were on the lowest level, buried deep in the mountain. He fought through 2 more groups of guards, taking another wound to his side. His vision started to blur from blood loss, but he did not stop. He could not stop. Finally, he reached the cell block. The doors were thick metal with electronic locks. Danny shot the control panel and the doors slid open. He moved from cell to cell, checking each one. Empty, empty, empty. Then he heard a small voice call out from the last cell on the left. Daddy. Danny ran to the cell and looked inside. Was there, huddled in the corner, her clothes dirty and her face streaked with tears. But she was alive. She was alive. Danny dropped to his knees outside the cell, working to open the lock with shaking hands. Daddy, I knew you would come. I knew it. The lock finally clicked open and Danny pulled the door aside. ran into his arms and held on like she would never let go. Danny held her just as tight, tears streaming down his face. For one moment, the battle raging around them did not matter. Nothing mattered except this. "I have got you," Danny whispered. "I have got you, baby. You are safe now." He lifted her up and carried her toward the extraction point, one arm wrapped around her and the other still holding his weapon. Guards tried to stop them. Danny shot every single one without hesitation. He was not a farmer in that moment. He was a father, and there was nothing in the universe more dangerous. The dropship was waiting when they reached the surface. Other soldiers provided cover fire as Danny carried up the ramp. The ship lifted off before the doors were even fully closed, climbing through the smoke and fire toward the safety of the fleet above. Commander watched from the command center as the human ships retreated with their prize. He had lost over 200 hunters. His compound was in ruins, and one human child was now safely on her way home. He did not understand. He could not understand. Everything they believed about strength and weakness had been proven wrong in a single day. Was safe, but humanity was not finished yet. Not by a long way, sat in the medical bay of the Resolute, wrapped in a warm blanket and holding a cup of hot chocolate. Her father sat beside her, his wounds now properly treated and bandaged. He had refused to leave her side since the rescue, and nobody tried to make him. Amy Turner, the ship's medical officer, finished her examination with a gentle smile. "She is scared and tired but physically unharmed. They had not hurt her yet." Danny closed his eyes and let out a breath he felt like he had been holding for days. Thank you so much." Amy patted his shoulder. "Thank the commander and the crew, they got us here in time." On the bridge, Commander Grant received a message from Earth Command. He read it twice, then read it a third time to make sure he understood correctly. A small smile crossed his tired face. "New orders," he announced to his crew. "The rescue was Phase 1. Phase 2 is about to begin." The crew waited for him to explain. "We are not leaving space. More ships are on their way. Our mission is now to ensure that this never happens again, not to any human child anywhere ever." The crew exchanged looks. They understood what this meant. The rescue had been personal. What came next would be a message to the entire galaxy. Over the following days, the human fleet in space grew from 12 ships to 30, then 50, then over 100. It was the largest military operation humanity had ever conducted outside their own territory. The resources being spent were enormous. Alien observers calculated the cost and could not understand why humans would do this for one child who was already safe. The High Council sent diplomats to negotiate. They offered payments. They offered territory. They offered to return all captives from all species they had ever taken. Surely, they said, this would satisfy the humans. Commander Grant met with the diplomats aboard the Resolute. He listened to their offers politely, then shook his head. "You do not understand," he said quietly. "This is not about payment or territory. This is about making sure every species in this galaxy knows what happens when you take a human child. We are going to destroy your military capabilities so completely that you will never be able to hunt anyone ever again. And we are going to do it while the entire galaxy watches." The diplomats returned to their council with pale faces and trembling voices. Ships from other species began arriving at the edge of the combat zone. They were not there to fight. They were there to observe. The sent 3 vessels. The collective sent 5. Even the reclusive keeper species, who rarely left their home system, sent observers to watch what the humans would do. What they saw stunned them. The human fleet moved through space systematically, targeting military installations, weapons factories, and warships. They destroyed everything that could be used to hurt others, but they did not touch civilian populations. They did not bomb cities. They did not seek revenge against ordinary who had nothing to do with the kidnapping. When soldiers surrendered, humans took them prisoner instead of killing them. When ships tried to flee, humans disabled their engines instead of destroying them completely. It was the strangest form of warfare the galaxy had ever seen. Observer sent a message back to his government. "The humans are angrier than any species I have ever encountered," he wrote, "and yet they are showing more restraint than any species I have ever encountered. They could burn this entire civilization to ash. They choose not to. I do not understand them, but I know I do not want to be their enemy." Commander was captured during the fall of the military headquarters. He was brought before Commander Grant in chains, expecting to be executed. Instead, Grant simply looked at him with cold eyes. "You will stand trial for your crimes," Grant said. "Not just against humans, but against every species you and your people have hunted over the centuries. Justice will be served, but it will be justice, not revenge." Could not comprehend this. In culture, the strong did whatever they wanted to the weak. Mercy was seen as foolishness, and yet here was a human, clearly the stronger one now, choosing to show mercy. "Why?" asked. "You could kill me right now. I took your young. By every law of nature, you should want me dead." Grant leaned forward. "Because we are not you. We protect our children because we love them, not because we are weak. And we show mercy because we are strong enough to control our anger. That is what separates us from beasts." He straightened up and motioned for the guards to take away. "Think about that while you wait for your trial." On the Resolute had started smiling again. She played games with the crew members who had helped rescue her. She drew pictures of her home on New Eden and talked about her mother. Danny watched her with a mixture of joy and pain. She was too young to fully understand what had happened, but she would carry scars from this experience for the rest of her life. Lisa arrived on a transport ship 3 days after the rescue. She had refused to stay behind on New Eden while her husband and daughter were in danger. When she stepped onto the Resolute and saw running toward her, she fell to her knees and pulled her daughter into her arms. "My baby," she whispered through tears. "My sweet baby girl." Danny joined them, wrapping his arms around both of them. For a long moment, the three of them just held each other. The crew members who saw it quietly turned away to give the family their privacy. Many of them had tears in their own eyes. The war, if it could be called that, lasted 2 more weeks. By the end, the military was completely neutralized. Their hunting ships were scrap metal. Their weapons factories were rubble. Their leaders were in custody awaiting trial. But the most important victory was not military. It was the change in how the galaxy saw humanity. Before this, humans had been considered a minor species. Clever, certainly, but physically weak and emotionally soft. Many alien species had assumed that humans would eventually be conquered or absorbed by a stronger civilization. Now they knew better. Now they understood that humans were not weak. They were restrained. There was a profound difference between the two. And when that restraint was broken, when something precious was threatened, humans became the most terrifying force the galaxy had ever seen. The message had been sent. The universe had received it. The surrender ceremony took place on a neutral space station at the edge of territory. Representatives from over 40 different species attended, filling the observation galleries to capacity. They had come to witness something historic. They had come to see the collective, hunters who had terrorized the galaxy for thousands of years, finally brought to their knees. The High Elder entered the chamber first, followed by what remained of his council. They moved slowly, their heads lowered, their claws retracted. For a species that valued strength above all else, this public display of defeat was worse than death. Commander Grant stood at the center of the chamber, representing the human government. He did not gloat. He did not smile. He simply waited for the to approach. The High Elder stopped before him and spoke in a voice rough with exhaustion and shame. "The collective surrenders unconditionally. We accept whatever terms humanity demands." Grant nodded once. "The terms are simple. All hunting of sentient species ends immediately and permanently. All captives currently held by your people will be returned to their home worlds. Your leaders will stand trial for crimes against sentient beings. Your military will be reduced to a defensive force only. You will pay reparations to every species you have harmed." The High Elder lowered his head even further. "We accept." It was done. In that single moment, thousands of years of dominance came to an end. The observers in the galleries made no sound. The weight of what they were witnessing was too great for words. The trials began 1 month later. Commander was among the first to be judged. Evidence was presented of his crimes, not just against, but against dozens of other victims from various species over his long career. He sat in the defendant's chair without expression, refusing to defend himself. When the verdict came, it was guilty on all charges. The sentence was life imprisonment on a penal colony, where he would live out his remaining years unable to hurt anyone ever again. Some species thought this was too lenient. Humans disagreed. "Killing him would be easy," the human prosecutor explained. "Making him live with his defeat, watching the galaxy move on without him, knowing that everything he believed about strength was wrong, that is far more fitting." The trials continued for months. Hundreds of hunters and officials were convicted. Their victims, many of whom had never expected to see justice, finally received some measure of closure. It was not perfect. Nothing could undo the harm that had been done, but it was something. Did not attend the trials. She was back on New Eden with her parents, slowly returning to normal life. She had nightmares sometimes, dreams where gray figures chased her through endless darkness. But she also had her mother and father beside her every night, ready to hold her and comfort her until the fear passed. The family became famous throughout human space and beyond. News programs wanted interviews. Book publishers wanted their story. Politicians wanted to use them as symbols. Danny and Lisa refused everything. They just wanted to be left alone to raise their daughter in peace. The galaxy's view of humanity shifted permanently after the incident. Species that had ignored human requests for alliance suddenly became eager to negotiate. Trading partners who had offered unfair terms now sought to build genuine partnerships. The few hostile civilizations that had been considering aggression against human colonies quickly changed their minds. At a galactic council meeting 6 months after the surrender, an ambassador asked a question that had been on everyone's mind. She directed it at the human delegation, but really it was a question for the entire chamber. "What made you do it? You spent more resources rescuing one child than most species would spend defending their entire. It does not make logical sense. Why?" The human ambassador, a young woman named Grace Porter, stood to answer. She was quiet for a moment, choosing her words carefully. "You asked why we did what we did. The answer is simple, but I think it might be hard for some of you to understand. We did it because mattered, not because she was special, not because she was important, just because she was a human child, and no human child anywhere should ever have to feel alone and afraid." She paused and looked around the chamber at the many different faces watching her. "Every child in our species matters the same way, every single one. If you had taken a different child from a different colony, we would have done the exact same thing. That is not irrational. That is who we are. Our children are not just our future. They are our reason for existing." The chamber was silent. Some of the observers understood. Others still looked confused. But all of them remembered her words long after the meeting ended. Years later, a young historian was researching the war that had ended his people's way of life. He traveled to the place where his grandfather, the old council member who had warned about humans, had spent his final years. The old was dying now, his time almost over. The historian asked his grandfather one question. "What stunned you most about the humans? What made them different from every other species you encountered?" The old thought for a long time before answering. His voice was weak, but his words carried the weight of decades of reflection. "We thought we were the predators. We believed humans were soft because they protect their young instead of letting the weak perish. We did not understand. Humans do not protect their children because they are weak. They protect their children because their children are everything. And there is nothing in this universe more dangerous than a human protecting what they love. He closed his eyes and did not speak again. On New Eden, the sun was setting behind the wheat fields, was 12 years old now, tall and strong and no longer afraid of the dark. She helped her father in the fields and studied science with her mother. She had friends and hobbies and dreams about the future. The scars from her kidnapping had not disappeared, but they had faded. Danny stood in the doorway of her bedroom, watching her settle under her blankets. It was a ritual they had maintained every night since the rescue, even as she grew older. He would tuck her in and make sure she knew she was safe. "Dad," asked as he reached for the light. "Yes, sweetheart." "Do you think the monsters will ever come back?" Danny walked back to her bed and sat down on the edge. He took her hand in his and looked into her eyes, the same eyes that had looked at him with such hope when he found her in that cell. "No," he said firmly, "they will never come back, and if any other monsters ever try, they will learn the same lesson as the first ones." Smiled and squeezed his hand. "I know, because you will always come for me." Danny leaned down and kissed her forehead. "Always, no matter what, no matter where, no matter how far I have to go or what I have to do, I will always come for you." He turned off the light and walked to the door. Before he left, he looked back at his daughter one more time. She was already drifting off to sleep, safe and warm and loved. Danny closed the door gently and walked down the hallway to where Lisa was waiting for him. They stood together by the window, looking out at the stars that filled the night sky. Somewhere out there, countless alien species were still talking about what humans had done. They were studying humanity, trying to understand them, trying to figure out how a species so soft could be so strong. They would never fully understand, but they had all learned one simple truth that they would never forget. You do not touch humanity's children. Ever.